Thanks everyone for joining us for Craft Beer Social Media, Document, Don't Create. I'd like to introduce myself first. I'm the moderator. My name is Monica Frost. I work with the BC Craft Brewers Guild, Communications and Operations. I also work with BC Ale Trail, Social Media and Community Manager, and then various other private contracts. So you've seen me working lots of beer events. So thank you. Now I'm going to introduce our panel today. We have Marissa Mills. Marissa has been the marketing director at Parallel 49 Brewing for 2.5 years. Marissa received her bachelor's in marketing management at McGill University. Prior to heading to the marketing department at Parallel 49, Marissa worked at Vice Media in Stockholm as a photographer and a writer. Next up, we've got Jorden Foss. Jorden is the co-owner and operator of Steel and Oak Brewing Company. He has a broadcast and media communications degree from BCIT, and before opening Steel and Oak, he worked for 7 years in audio advertising. Jorden is married with 2 young sons, which is why you don't see a ton of photos on Steel and Oak at night, because he's in bed. And we have Josh Vanderheide. Josh is the founder and Fieldhouse Brewing Co. He began his career working for national advertising agencies, then went on to co-found his own brand and marketing agency in Gastown, working with breweries, wineries, and distilleries on their marketing, packaging, and brand identity, which eventually led him to opening Fieldhouse in Abbotsford. We're going to go through the presentation, and at the end of each section, if you've got a question, just pop your hand up and we'll come around and answer. But we will have a proper Q&A at the end of the session as well. All right. Problematic.
Oh, man. This is going to be a problem the whole time. Okay, so what we're going to do today is we've kind of worked through some different topics, and what we've done is kind of giving you 3 snapshots from each of our perspectives, and we're just going to go through them kind of slide by slide, and each of us speak to kind of what's going on in the reference point, just so you're getting kind of we all have different takes. We have different size businesses and different levels of experience. So that's how we're going to work it. I think you can ask questions along the way if you need some clarification, or if we'll just burn through things and then we can ask questions at the end. So we'll just get started. Okay, so the first section is just just addressing content and content mix. I think that's something that we talked a lot about when we kind of met about this session. Is around where's the content coming from, what is it, and what drives it. So I guess because I'm on the mic, I'll start first. So the big thing from Fieldhouse is that we, I'm sure like your guys' businesses, there's a lot going on, and it's always trying to achieve that right mix of content. And so we really sort of hyper focus on, not having 2 beer posts in a row, or too many food posts, or too many of anything. It's really trying to blend that content. So as a reference here, trying to, when you're looking at some of your feed from Instagram, and I think we're going to probably, a lot of the references will be Instagram based, but we'll try to make sure we expand that to Twitter and Facebook and other platforms as well. But really, for us, we do really consciously try to understand how we can represent all the areas of the business, because from a brand perspective, that's our strength, is showing the what's going on with our people, what new beers are coming out, what are we launching, what's new in the food program, what's new in our farm program that we're trying to feature, and what is that experience on the lawn that's happening today, or are we doing live music tonight? And it's really trying to capture of the moment what's going on. And I think this goes back to, for us, the overarching theme of sort of to explain the document, don't create. I think that came from just a place of authenticity around not trying to just make up creative ways and it's funny because I come from the world of advertising, and advertising typically is trying to make up a thing to sell another thing, and you don't always have to go this a roundabout way when what we have from a craft brewery industry perspective is we have such great content to work with. So just really focusing on documenting what you have without making something up just to sell what you're trying to do. So that's kind of the sort of overarching theme. But my big takeaway from content mix is just trying to balance all the things you have going on and trying to curate that within your social media offering, so that people have a really well-rounded idea of what's going on at your brewery, versus being too heavy in any one area is going to really skew sort of their perceptions.
So I'll be speaking on Parallel 49. Just jumping back to the concept of document, don't create. That came from a Gary Vaynerchuk. Some of you might follow Gary V. Better to read than listen to. He's a little bit obnoxious, but he has some really great ideas, such as this one. So really it's predicated on the practicality of showing people what you do every day, and the authenticity behind your brand, just like Josh was saying. So the image I have up here is of one of our most recent posts, actually, but also one of our most liked posts. And so I was going through thinking, what can we learn and what insights can you retrieve from what people are engaging with most and what people are liking most? So obviously it's not always a battle for the likes, because likes don't necessarily translate into sales of your product or into people actually showing up at your events. But when people are engaging with you on social, there's something that this photo is doing, or something that we did correctly, that made people want to engage with this. So for us, document, don't create means really putting our art to the forefront. Obviously, as P49, we've had the same artist for all 6 years that we've been around. And so showing our art and making it really simple, the art and beer in a glass has been huge for us. We experimented a lot with putting a character on the artwork with something that was similar to the environment that the character's in, but people just want to see the art at the end of the day, and they want to hear the crazy names, the crazy artwork, and they want to see what the beer looks like in the glass next to it. So we've learned that people don't engage with posts that much. They have so many questions and make a lot more backlog for our social media managing team if they don't know what the liquid actually looks like. So that's just a basis for how we take on document, don't create. And something else I'd like to sort of negate as P49 as like the bigger dog at the table here today is that I've been at the company for half of its life, and so we didn't always exist as a large company with a wide reach. So I think since when I started, the company was in year 3, and now in year 6, we've always been acting like a company that is bigger and has like a larger voice. And I think for regardless of the scale or the size of your brewery, sort of acting as though you are the place you want to be at. Take your social really seriously, whether or not you have 100 followers or 10,000 followers, and sort of treat it the same, regardless of where you want it to be or where it is today.
Great, thanks, Marissa. So for us, for content creation and documenting is basically mine and my business partner Jamie's lives. We're not a big company, so for us, we don't have you're looking at the social media and marketing department right now, amongst all the other things that I have to do at the brewery. So for us, just out of survival in the early days, we just documented our lives with building this brewery together, a couple friends from high school trying to make this work in a city that we live in. And almost just kind of in a backwards way, it worked because the audience that we talk to is hyper local in New Westminster. And New Westminster happens to be a bunch of 35-year-old people with kids that used to live in other areas. So we actually speak to the same audience that we actually are. So it makes it a little bit more easier for what we're trying to achieve, which is really building a brand within our city and growing from there. I think the important thing with social media, especially for many breweries that I'm looking out there right now that are probably on a smaller side, is it's just no bullshit. Just document what you do day to day. People know that you make good beer, and a lot of times people know what it looks like. What they really care about are the people behind the brand. At least that's the way that we feel, and giving them something a little bit more than just just the beer that they get to enjoy at your place. Show them what you do behind the scenes. Show them that you have families, that you are engaged in your community, that you do other things. It's an important part of being just a good business. Letting your customers know and your potential customers know that yes, they're going to enjoy good beer, but what you stand for as a brand is more than that. So that when they do have that drink, they can feel good about it as well.
Do you want to just go back?
Yeah, for sure.
Pass the mic?
Yeah, I can start this next one for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so this one is going to be on building a brand. How did we kind of all start? If you're a new brewery and you have 0 followers, you're like, shit, how am I going to get this going on? That's the first ever Steel and Oak post. I can't see how many likes, but there probably wasn't a lot. on Facebook.
Zero.
There was there was probably 20 something, and it was probably my family, to be honest with you. 27?
No, it said 20 something. 24.
24. There you go. And that, you know what the sad thing is even though we've built the brand, so it tells you how many people actually cycled back to look at old photos. None. So, so this was our first ever post. For us, what I recommend to your breweries, and especially the new ones starting up, is find out that other thing that you are outside of beer. For us at Steel and Oak, our name is really a throw to the old way and the new way of doing things. It's the old way of brewing beer and the new way of doing it. It's the old part of the heritage of the city of New West and the new way that it's going forward. And so for us in our original marketing, we always wanted to achieve this kind of tie into and throwback that New West was actually home to the first brewery in the Lower Mainland. And so it was important for us to make that connection with all of our customers and the people that live in the city, that beer's always been a part of New Westminster's culture. I had never really mentioned that it was Labatt's for a while, but just to let them know that there's always been beer here, and we're just continuing this tradition. So in order to build a brand early on, I did a lot of work in real life, to be honest. We would go out to events. We would sell hoodies at markets, even though we didn't have a brewery, and we would attach a tag on the side that would have a button on one side. On the other side, it would just be a simple stamp that says, for updates, follow us on Instagram, and it would have our social handle. We would, at those launches, I would get the local bakery, Pink Ribbon, who had a ton of followers at the time and was a friend of mine, to make a cake out of beer for us. And so she would then post on her social channel that, yes, Steel and Oak's not open yet, but they're going to have a pop-up merchandise shop, and you can come down, have some cake, try some beer, and we just get a special event license for that. And it was a way to attract people to our brand, but also grow our social media following at the same time. And although it may sound super, super simple, if you're a new brewery, put paper over your windows and put a vinyl on there that says, beer coming soon. For updates, follow us here. We had so many people that would walk by our brewery and try and look inside to see what was going on. And they would I would see them on their phones out there taking a photo of the window, and our followership would grow from there. And then a few of the other things that we would always do is we'd use the New West hashtag, which for us is find a popular hashtag or a few in your own community or who you're trying to speak to, and utilize it. And for us, it worked really, really well. And the other few things that I learned from my broadcast media background is that, generally speaking, print media is now, because it's so much smaller than it once was, if you can take a good photo and send press releases out, people will pick that shit up. I didn't even realize until last night. So there's these Growly Awards going on, the Growler Awards, and I got my local paper last night, and I'm in it with them talking about the Growly Awards and that New West needs to rally and vote for Steel and Oak, which is part of being in a small community like we are. But don't underestimate print media and pushing them to your brand. If you can send them a slick photo and a press release, they'll use it because they don't have to send a photographer out to take a photo of you, and they have all the information they need in front of them. So those are just a few of the things that we did early days.
So we have been through a huge growth phase, obviously, that many of you followed along with. And our social wasn't always the place where it is today for a number of reasons, but it also, when we started 6 years ago, it wasn't a huge thing. Instagram didn't really exist. So we have had to build the brand with the emerging technology. So what I have to say about that is learn about technology and figure out what is coming down the pipeline. I'll touch a little bit more on that later on, but Facebook was pretty much the only medium for us when we first started out, and then that move over to Instagram and thinking is this going to have longevity? Are our follower base going to follow us here? Do they care? Is Twitter going to continue being the main thing that we communicate to our customers with? So obviously Instagram, like these guys have been saying too, is the main platform for all of us for a number of different reasons. But what I'd like to discuss on how we have maintained an influence and maintained a steady growth in our follower base, because it's kind of hard to hit that plateau. And it's really easy to be like a brewery and, well, not really easy, but to be a brewery who's starting up and people join and then you sort of plateau and you want to maintain that cool factor. And I will be honest that it's a struggle sometimes, and we ask ourselves questions about how we can continue to maintain that. But a huge way we do that is through an influencer program. And that might seem like a really daunting word. It's not like we're paying people a lot of money or any money at all for this. An influencer program can be through a wide scale and scope. So the thing that's up on the screen right now is something we did for May the 4th, the date. And it was May the 4th be with you is a popular hashtag. And so we did a flight of dark side and a flight of light side. And with a influencer called Papa Fett, who is a good friend of the brewery, and all of his posts are Star Wars themed. So we felt this was a really great tie-in, and we essentially got him to do a story takeover, which takes resourcing off of our team and creativity off of our team, which obviously it's fun to be creative all the time, but it can be really challenging to come up with creative, fun stuff all the time. So influencers like this, we just said, hey, do you want to come down? We'd love to hang out with you. And what that means is we have access to his follower base, he has access to our follower base, and we're constantly tagging one another. And it cost us 2 flights, and maybe we send him home with a couple, limited edition beers or something like that that were of value to him. But for us, the value is exponential because there's people who don't know about us or who, might not think that as a brewery who's grown so fast, we're still doing cool, exciting things and staying local in our community and staying involved with influencers. But I can't stress enough how important it is to get involved with brands who have similar interests or very different interests, but who have a little bit of overlap with your brand because those that audience of yours shares a lot of the characteristics and psychographic sort of information that your audience will.
So awkward. Okay, so just kind of 2 points I want to make. I think just echoing some of Jordan's thoughts on the early days. I remember when we had this first website, and it was very just had an image and had some content. And before we redid our website, I always just found myself sending people to our social media early days because it definitely reflected the energy of what was going on in the brewery. And like as Jordan said, we were selling T-shirts and hats before we were ever selling beer. So I think just really just understanding that value that websites a lot are becoming sort of, they're not obsolete, but they unless you design them really well, that a lot of people aren't going back to them all the time. And so really the value of social media is really capturing the energy of what's happening within your space or within your brewing program, whatever that thing you want to feature is. It's just a huge value. So and I think the sort of the last point is just as the business is growing and as the brand's growing, one thing we talk a lot about is not overselling things. There's a real fine line balance between marketing, telling people what you want to do, and creating or being conscious that you're not creating a false expectation. And people come down and be like, oh, I saw this from Seattle or Vancouver or wherever it is, and my immediate feeling is, oh, I hope it lived up to the expectations in some way, and we didn't let them down. And it's just a conscious effect that we try to make things look good in social media, and things do weirdly look so much better in a picture than they do in real life. Like our lawn always looks green, but if you see our lawn, if you look down top, it's like half brown and half green. It's dirt and grass, so it's better in the summer. But the reality is that I think we need to make sure that from a brand perspective that you heard of a concept of a brand promise that what you've put out there in the world is gonna align with that expectation when they get there. And if it doesn't, that's a really disappointing place to be. Kind of either way. You can't undersell it too much because you won't get people down there. And if you oversell it, when people get there, they're gonna be like, oh, it's weird. It's not as grassy as I thought it would be. And there's not as many kids or moms with babies I saw in the pictures. So yeah, I think that's a big point to just be conscious of as your brand's growing. Just make sure it's in the sweet spot. It's not overselling and not underselling. And we're gonna try to pick up a little speed because we got about 10 slides here. So the next one is about content resources and hiring. So. Our story at Fieldhouse is that, I started the Instagram feed once upon a time, and, I ran it for a period of time in the early days of document what was going on. But, at a certain point, with all the compounding effects of mostly paperwork and structural change applications, that you're waiting for. You know, you got a lot of things to do, and you have to find some ways to you know, pass the torch on to. And, well, Jorden will tell you don't have to pass the torch on to people, but in our business that was for two reasons. One. It can be exhausting, you know, to be always on, to be always posting, to always be thinking about what's going on in the brewery, and also trying to collect all that content. Like, you know, trying to chase people around the brewery, trying to figure out, you know, what's in that beer that we're launching today is a real process. And we'll talk a little bit about tools and automation around that. But for us, you know, I passed it on to Ashley, who's our brand manager, and we had a long discussion around, you know, what it started with and what were the consistent pieces, and also what did she want to do and put her own spin. And then she ran that for about a year and a half, 2 years, and then she just passed on to Shelby, who's in the middle here, and she's running our social media now. And you know, how do you create that that consistency throughout the brand, that it still feels like Fieldhouse, but we have completely different people with different perspectives running that. And you know, we're still looking at bringing other people in our team and getting them involved and bringing new ideas to the table. So the big thing is trying to find a way to keep it going and keep it fresh without burning people out, because it, you know, if you've ever run your social media account and you know you need a couple posts a day, and then it's the weekend, you're like, oh, it's the weekend, I thought I had the weekend off, but I don't, because I'm running a social media account. And being really conscious with your staff about that too, really sensitive to the fact that like they have sort of a 24/7 type of job, and that's tough for them, and we need to make sure that we're not, you know, exhausting them as a resource, because if they get burned out, then we got to pass the torch on to somebody else. So just some things to be aware of with who's running your Instagram account, and the considerations around passing the torch.
So the post that you'll see up here is actually from the Flying Beer Girl. She's our social media manager right now. She's amazing. She's right over here. And so I want to touch on a little bit on hiring and how we found that process to be, because it is a huge leap of faith to be able to let go of that communication with your audience. And there's so many things that you learn from your social media, which are very obvious, but there's little things like QA, and there's maintenance of how to deal with customers and how to respond to trolls, but also to great feedback. So we're going to touch a little bit more on those things later, but I think everyone would agree that passing off that torch to someone else and relinquishing control of your social is a huge step for anyone to take. So I wanted to briefly discuss our experience with hiring for these roles. For a while I did it, but in our current situation, I oversee and advise and strategize with our amazing social media manager. And again, we work with people like influencers and a team of artists as well. So it is really a collaborative effort for us, but that through that hiring process, I really want to stress how you should find someone who's great at marketing. People can learn beer, and people can't necessarily learn marketing and how that needs to be done. So we got extremely lucky, and our social media manager is fantastic at both. But my personal opinion is that look for certain strengths, and then the beer side can be taught, and the passion should hopefully be behind that. But the huge thing is to ask people questions like, what is your greatest social media mistake, and how did you deal with that? What are some accounts that you follow that you think are doing a really amazing job? Because if that person has a vision for how yours could be and potentially should be, then maybe they can take your social media to the exact same place. And then one more thing on this is we go with a 70-20-10 rule. So 70% of the time, you do shit that works and that you know works. 20% of the time, take risks on your social. And 10% of the time, be like, I have no idea if anyone's going to like this. This is an experiment. It's kind of weird, whether that's on the content or on the copy side of things. But we kind of find that 70-20-10 rule works for both social and for events and a lot of different aspects of marketing.
So I'm a bit of a control freak. And the content creators are in that photo, which is basically myself and my business partner, and we get our wives to hold the camera sometimes when we're in it, or sometimes we'll get the kids. They're pretty good at holding the camera now too, and we literally create the content in that group right there. That's us in Hawaii, because we're friends, so we go on family vacation together, and I pack a bunch of labels in my bag and empty beer cans, and I take them with me so that we can stage photos while we're on vacation. My wife absolutely hates it. And so it is something that where I'm going to have to relinquish eventually. It is a really hard thing to do because when you're a small business, there was 3 of us when we opened the doors outside of our 2 tasting room staff. You're so married to this project that you've put together, and you've been the voice of it for so long that it is a hard thing to give up. So I'm going to learn some stuff here today too. But I will quickly touch on one of the things that we have learned. I don't have as much time to take all the photos, especially when we have new beer releases. But there's a guy that comes into the tasting room all the time, and he's a pretty good professional photographer. So every once in a while in the Steel and Oak feed, you'll see we kind of have this attitude with content creation that it needs to be just shitty enough, which means it needs to look good, but it needs to be just shitty enough that somebody thinks that the person on the other side of the phone or the lens actually works at the brewery and actually does other shit there, which is the truth. Whenever I post really polished photos that are done from our photographer, the engagement goes way down. If I post a photo of the beer with our newest mural background with my iPhone, the engagement goes up. And I think it's that old, people don't want to be advertised to. And if it looks too good, they're going to see right through it, especially for our customers. So we're not selling iPhones or Apple products here. We're selling something that's handcrafted. And we want people to know that it's a little bit, it's not perfect. The floor doesn't look as nice. The grass doesn't look as nice. It's real. And so, which is probably why I have such a tough time giving it up, is because what we've been doing has been working. And that's because we're not professional photographers. We know how to line things up, but we're just shitty enough that it works. I'll rip on now, actually, because I think we are going to get tight on time, so I'll go on to the next one. So which media to use and when? It's tough because, in all fairness, there's 3 major ones, right? There's Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And then Instagram throws this whole new shit at you with Instagram stories. And you're like, oh, fuck, I got to deal with this now, too. And so I just have a few general rules before we go into some Instagram story videos. Anything with a link or something that needs to be clickable for us lives on Facebook or Twitter. As you probably are aware, you can't click a link on Instagram. You can direct people to your bio page where they can click a link there, but it actually doesn't work that well. It doesn't happen often enough. So events for us live on Facebook and Twitter. Obviously, anything that looks super pretty goes on Instagram. The nice thing with this too is with your breweries, I'm sure you get approached by pubs or restaurants you're in or liquor stores that want you to help promote their event that you're at. But what they've given you may not exactly jive with your aesthetic. And you're like, fuck, I don't want to put this online because it looks ugly. So we use Twitter and Facebook to just kind of bury those. It makes your clients happy. And at the same point in time, the nice thing about Facebook and Twitter is it works in this linear fashion. Whereas Instagram, when you pull up a bio page, you can see all your beautiful photos and it should all go together. And if there's this one like fluorescent green poster just in the corner, it's annoying as hell. So I'd recommend Facebook and Twitter for those things. I hold Instagram sacred. I think probably most of us do, just because it is the overall visual of your brand. And so we're very protective where if it goes on Instagram, we create it. Now I'm just going to hop over to Instagram stories because they did throw a bit of a monkey wrench into the mix because it is an extra thing to deal with. But the nice thing about it is it's your opportunity to not have to worry about being polished, about showing your customers behind the scenes of the fact that you're all here right now, or some the guys dancing in the brewery to some music playing. It's a way to show your personality and not having to be too polished. So for us, what goes on a story is more behind the scenes stuff. I'll get Josh to click on the link of our staff party, and hopefully it works. But it's Instagram stories, so it's vertical, so it'll probably look like shit.
Also, you can't hear it.
No, you can't hear it.
Should we like it?
No, we shouldn't. It's just me talking. So we just used an opportunity to give our customers being like, okay, these are just regular people hanging out at somebody's house. My business partner's in real estate, which is why the house looks nice. My house does not look like that. And that's my business partner there way up on the roof. He's the guy that does all the hiking. And so this is probably our most looked at story is him getting through this donut in his pool and from another angle. It was critical. Yeah. So for us, we use stories just to throw a little bit more of the personality of the people behind the beer. and what we do in our day-to-day lives when we're not at the brewery.
So here I would also like to discuss Facebook and what works for Facebook versus what didn't work for us in terms of this video. This video is one that we spent quite a bit of time and energy producing because it was actually a reactionary video in response to seeing a product that was in market that we're like, fuck, this isn't working that well. People have no idea what to do with this. It's a beer and they're pouring it into a glass and that's not what they're supposed to do. This is a nitro beer in a bottle. It's called Parallelogram, which this video is sort of promoting. And so the reactionary approach is one that we're not really used to doing. Usually we're trying to be proactive, trying to stay ahead of the curve. But with this, we recognized that people weren't popping open the top and then dumping it, sort of like the Guinness, into a beer to get that nitro cascade. And so everyone was ending up with these flat beers. So if you could click the video, we don't have to watch the whole thing, but what works in this video is it's hilarious. That's Graham, and that's one of our other owners, Mike Sleeman. And we did the scientist sort of thing where it's how not to drink this and how to drink this. Graham the scientist. It's our artist. So that's the video, and we did put a lot of time and energy into that because it was more of an education piece. We wanted to teach people how to pour this beer properly because it's something that's outside of the norm of how to pour a beer. So the reason that Facebook was important to the success of this and to actually reaching our customers is because it's designed to be shared on Facebook. And Instagram's functionality is not designed for you to easily click share and also to track through metrics how many people have shared that or how many people have watched or commented on that. And while those numbers might not be important to you, while I and the rest of the marketing team work for owners, we're not the owners, showing metrics is quite important and saying, look, there's been 3,100 shares on this video. That's 3,100 people who have potentially seen that video. And so that shows that we've done a good effort, at least, to try and promote how to use this product properly. So for us, it's really a good information tool, but also look at the functionality of a certain platform and choose what you share on that platform based on what the fundamentals of that platform are based on. If it is something you want to be shared, don't necessarily put it on Instagram and expect it to be shared on Instagram because it's really hard to do that. Put it somewhere where it's really easy. People are really lazy. People like things to be easy and they like to be entertained. So entertain them and put it on Facebook if you want them to share it.
Okay, so yeah, I think just to echo Jordan's sentiments, I mean, when Stories was launched, I mean, I don't know if anybody feels this way. Like as they get, I'm like, nah, I just turned 40. I have 3 kids. Like, and as I get every year I get worse at social media or the internet, like somehow. And like I feel myself moving towards my grandma, which she's really happy. Well, before she died, that was, about how she's just was so proud that she's not on any technology thing in the world. And I was kind of jealous. So I think just going back to the previous point, one of the benefits of passing the Instagram or social media on to your team is that a lot of these people are going to be better at this than you. And, well, you don't have as much gray hair as I do. So I think when Stories came out, one other note is that I think we just really struggled with how to use it and how it could feel the same as our brand, and we had to really come to terms with maybe not controlling it as aesthetically as possible. So this video here is of a story from one of our music festivals we do, Fieldhouse Fest every year. And it's weird watching a video of a music festival with no sound, obviously. But I think what we wrapped our head around is these experiences that we work really hard to create. It's really our way that we can really show people those experiences and get them to come to the next one if they've never been to one, because it can really tell the whole story versus one image or even a series of images won't be as engaging as what it's like to see the motion aspect and the people and the music and all the different things, and also to be able to add those comments or different things or links in between. So I think just really for us, it took us a long time to figure out how to use stories, and I think now we've really seen the value of them and the engagement level of how that can just add a new dynamic to the offering. And it just this is an event that starts at noon and it runs till 11 o'clock. This is the internet feed issue.
11 o'clock, right?
This is the blackout part. Anyways, we don't have to watch the whole thing, but plus you can't hear any music, so it doesn't matter. Anyways, I think the net takeaway I think is that as we're saying, each of these media offers something different. So as you're looking at your whole mix of all the different media from Facebook or Instagram, or even just within each media, really just be really intentional with how to use that and what type of content you want to feed into that direction versus other areas. We'll keep going, just keep things rolling here because the time's ticking away. I see how people run long. Aesthetics, this would be a quick one for me. This was our first post ever.
Really?
Yeah, this is the Ace Hotel in Palm Springs.
Hope we got more likes.
I don't know. Yeah, I had to cut that out. I only put this because from day one we've been running this, whatever you want to call it, desaturated filter on our images, and if you've seen our feed, you probably kind of get that. There's people who just friggin' hate how our images look. They tell us all the time, and I don't know why they tell us, because we're not changing it. But I think it's really better to understand the intent behind it. The reason we did it was because my background from being working in design and understanding, how to curate a brand and all those different things was to really offer a really distinct look and feel. And we came up and it's not like it's one of the filters. Like we bring the image into Visco, and then we use a certain filter there, and then we adjust each sort of level based on a number of factors, and we add a number of sort of twists and turns on it. And each image needs a slightly different treatment. If it's a food image, it needs different treatments. If it's an outdoor image, we're trying to get blue sky, you need to achieve those things. So the main thing is that I do believe, and I used to tell a lot of our clients this when I worked in design, whatever the aesthetic that you pick, it might not be as important as the fact that it's really valuable to have something that's unique and proprietary to your brand. So when you're in this very busy media and scrolling, you can immediately pick out your image in that feed, and that has a real value in a really complex media environment to be like, oh, immediately that's a Fieldhouse image, and that's what works for us. But for you, your feed and your style might be very different.
So for this one, this is a product that not everyone might be familiar with. It's called Kraft Cousins, and this is something that we sort of riffed off of Brewers Brothers. We're just going down in the alphabet from B to C. It was a really easy cop-out. And we brought this product only to Alberta. And something that I think is important to discuss here is how P49 has obviously grown, but how we've tried really, really hard to maintain our feel in the local and our presence in Vancouver. We've been in the same brewing facility and have the same tasting room location since day one when the brewery opened, and we currently send beer to Asia, to Europe, and to the States, and a little bit to more south than the States too. So that's sort of been a challenge and also a really cool opportunity for us to discover what works and also what doesn't achieve what we want it to in terms of our social and letting our consumers know that they can get our products overseas, but also maintaining the fact that we are in Vancouver, we're in the same place. You can we're still kind of a small business at the end of the day, it's not that many people behind the lens. So for us, the way we've done that is to take photos of the beer in a lot of the same locations, which might seem sort of like a no-brainer, but people understand what our brewery looks like. This is at our brewery on some really ghetto stairs with some chain link fence, and I think the Vancouver sort of look and feel of the air and the lighting is noticeable and is recognizable by people. So This is a product, again, that only went to Alberta, but our goal here was to show people that this is a new product that came out, but it's limited release and you can't actually get it if you are 90% of our consumers. But we're still doing this cool thing. We want to let you know that we're coming out with cool stuff that is localized to a certain place, but it came from our Vancouver brewery, and beer always will come from our Vancouver brewery. So that's been both an interesting and a challenging bridge to cross, but I would say always maintain the fact that you are authentic and that you're the same brand since day one, because people will believe in that, and if you believe in that.
So I'll just briefly touch on the look of our feed. It's evolved, as you could probably tell from our first post. We used to use a filter kind of more like Josh's, and I found that for the personality behind our brand, it didn't actually reflect who we were as people, and it just seemed like we were trying to be cooler than we actually are at Steel and Oak. So I slowly over time, I brightened it up to what you see there. It's supposed to look lively and exciting, and we have a lot of outdoor shots because my business partner hikes a lot and doesn't work a ton. So everything kind of needs to reflect that bright light. And so for us, it's worked really, really well. And it also makes me feel good when I look at the feed, because I realize that it is our personality behind what we're doing, and it's not faking it. But we slowly did it so that no one kind of noticed. But if you scroll back far enough, you can tell it's been a pretty drastic change over the years. The other thing I wanted to, is anybody from Electric Bicycle in the room? Okay, so I don't know if you guys did an awesome job on your launch feed too. If there's any breweries out there that are launching their brand, you can have a lot more fun with Instagram and your aesthetic and how it's going to play out over time, because you just have people that are waiting, but they haven't actually experienced the inside of your brewery or your packaged product. And if you want to go back on Electric Bicycle's feed, you'll see with a name like Electric Bicycle, you knew it was going to be this like colorful, spot, but everything was black and white. And the rad thing about it is that you kept going back to it because you were just waiting until they started to make it colorful, and you're like, shit, are they going to do this? And then they linked it up slowly, where colors started to creep into the photos. And it was just a really rad piece of art that I thought worked really, really well. Kudos to you guys for doing that. And it created this, it kind of led you into what their aesthetic was going to be. But the black and white kind of made it feel like they were still in the trenches putting it together. And, they were dark days, and then all of a sudden it became this beautiful, bright thing. So I think you can have more fun with imagery when you're a new brewery starting out and saying, okay, we get one shot at this. Let's draw it out on a piece of paper, and let's see how that's going to look as people scroll down. So yeah, I just wanted to mention it was really cool. I'm going to hop on to integrating graphics into your posts. What we find, and I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but I feel that Facebook and Instagram's algorithms absolutely hate it when you put text over a photo. We find that photos with text over top of them, or better yet, posters, they don't make it into as many people's feeds. Generally, also, they get less likes and engagement. If you're using a graphic to send out information that you have a party coming up, by all means, tweak it so that it looks like your own. As you can see, actually, Josh's example is a really good one. It still looks like a field house thing. Ours is for our anniversary party. And try, if you can, use the imagery behind it. It helps soften that, you're trying to send direct information to people. If you can, use an associated image and put all the information actually in the body of the message rather than as the visual. People just tend not to interact with it. The other thing I'll say is that once that event is over, delete it out of your feed. It's information that people don't need anymore. Often it tells them to go somewhere. So from a graphics point of view, it's good to get rid of that stuff afterwards.
So it was kind of hard to think of good examples and bad examples. So I've used our own example as a bad one, but also a really funny one, because I think it's always funny to make fun of Graham. And this is supposed to be Graham. And so this is for a barley wine festival that we did last year called Brawny Wine. And this is Graham as a Viking. And so this is just an example, again, of a Viking woman with blood dripping from his mouth. It's supposed to be barley wine, I think. But this was one of our few graphics that was made in this style that was actually effective. Although the image is kind of funny, maybe people liked it out of thinking it was funny to make fun of us too, like I did. But one thing that was effective about the way that this was posted, and this was our Instagram post, the way it came out, is this is the graphic from the poster, but we didn't like put the poster on there with our address and stuff. So just like Jorden was saying, if this goes into a story, use your own text to put it on top of it, or make your body text the informative part of it, because the information really just gets lost if you throw it in there as the image part. We always, for events, to put a link in our bio. I know people make fun of like, check the link in our bio, but it really is something that people go to over and over. And if we want people to have ease of use of our events, we want it to be as simple and seamless as possible. So we just URL the shit out of the posts because it leads people to more information, and there's a time and a place for more information, and the image part of your Instagram post is just not the place for that information. It's the place to put Graham as a woman drinking blood.
Yeah, not much more to add. I think just the two things just to reinforce. Redo graphics. If you want to promote an event, redo graphics with a filter of what fits with your brand. And if you don't want to see a ton of graphics in your feed, just delete them when they're gone. And you also go back through your feed too. Just go back and skim through. Kind of drives our team crazy. I'll go back and just randomly delete things because I just don't think they fit and contribute to the feed, or two things will be posted next to each other that are just too similar, and you can just go back and redo that, because some people do go back and scroll. If you ever look at your likes and engagement, you can see people have liked things that were like 2 weeks ago because of the new algorithms, that things aren't popping up in real time. You're getting them maybe when they're late, and that's obviously where stories play a role. Anyways, we'll move on. I think you guys get that. Automation. So I guess my notes here are two things. The first one is there's tools out there that help with this thing I said before about not trying to work 24/7. Every time we talk about it as a team where it's just too much, or I got plans this weekend, we use an app called Later. I'm sure some of you guys probably know what it is. You can just load in all your posts with all the text, everything in there. It'll pop up to one person's account that's got it. You press it and it's loaded up. I know Hootsuite does similar things. We just use this one because everything just gets automatically posted to Facebook and Twitter because we don't care as much about those. But yeah, just create tools that work for you so that you can give yourself a break and you're not just always scrambling all the time. The second one, I think it's really important on the automation side. One of the biggest challenges for our team was getting the information, whether that is a new feature coming out of our kitchen or a new beer coming out or whatever it is. And the frequency that we come out with features and or new beers is fairly often. So we use a tool called Typeform, which is just an online survey tool. We use it a lot of ways in our business. What it does is, say when there's a new beer, we ask the brewers to fill it out. It's got a prompt question. They'll edit what's the ingredients, how was it brewed, anything special to know. What happens is that gets entered and sent, and all of our management team gets in all the departments, so everybody's in the loop. It's just one of the easiest ways to decentralize information. It's really, really important that everybody has information. It's important your tasting room has it. It's important, obviously, for lots of people in the company, but that social media team needs that information. Otherwise, you have those errors around, what was actually in that beer. And it's so hard for someone who's disconnected from that process. So find your tools. I recommend those two. They've worked really well for us for different reasons.
So back to content resourcing, just for a very quick note, use your time as your most valuable currency. Obviously, money is a currency we talk about a lot. Your time is so valuable. So use tools and automation and find out the places that are in your daily schedule or your weekly schedule of where social media fits in, where you can get the most return on your investments. So this is something that you can spend hours per day or hours per week on, but you don't necessarily have to. So with social media, absolutely work smarter, not harder, is my biggest thing to say. So what I was going to say is the thing on screen shows an automated response, and so that keeps your Facebook response rate up. Response rate, I don't know if people care that much when they look at your page, like this person responds 97% of the time within 10 minutes. But with this automated tool, it does buy you a little bit of time, particularly if you know you're going to be on vacation or at a weekend like this when you're super busy doing professional development, put the autoresponder on, and then people at least know you're doing something. You can make it kind of punchy and fun, or just be like, hey, we're at the BC Beer Awards this weekend. We look forward to getting back to you on Tuesday after we've won some awards, something like that. But automation can really make your life a lot more productive, and look at productivity hacks for things like, I don't know, we use Slack a lot. In our company, if you're not using Slack, I highly recommend it. It's a messenger, but it has so many different functions built in, where it can remind you of things and make lists and make polls, just to make communication so much more facilitated among your organization.
I second Slack, and it's a great app that we've been using for a little while now. It's
free.
It is free up until you get to a certain point. Yeah. Yeah.
$6 a user.
Yeah, no, it's free until you load too many images up, but you can just delete them, but we can talk about that later. So I use a Trello. I use it for a lot of actually items that we do at the brewery, whether we're planning an event. It's just a good spot where you can kind of plan what needs to get done. So I actually just quickly organize my things in days of the week. On Monday, I schedule all my posts. Obviously, these photos are still taken from Jamie and I, but we will take bulk photos. So if Jamie's on a hike with the dogs, he'll take a bunch of cans of beer with him, and he'll take different photos. And then I have basically 4 folders that are in my lifestyle folder, and one is sunny day, rainy day, cloudy day, and I think the third one's like super sunny day or fall day. And so what I do is I actually organize my week, and then I check the weather, and I'll swap out. That's the important thing, is if you're going to pre-schedule this shit and it's a rainy day, people are going to be like, wait a second. So that's how I manage mine. It allows me to pre-write all my posts as well, which is nice. And also I like to think about it before it gets posted. So I'm actually the opposite, where I don't love the auto post function. The only time you can get into trouble is if something's happened in the world. Remember to take your auto post function off for a bit and just relook at what you're doing. If something major has happened, I've seen many different scenarios you don't think is going to happen, where there was some tragedy that's just happened, and Taco Bell forgot to put their auto post off, and it related to it. So Trello's a good one that I enjoy, and that's really kind of all I do to manage my life a little bit easier. And I should probably do more now that I think about it. But anyways. Okay, let's go on. Oh shit, okay.
There's one word things. Yellow, banana.
Okay. Haters. We lucky. We don't really get a ton, but we're also a small brewery. So I'll probably pass this along to Marissa, that probably has to deal with a lot more people than I do.
What are you saying? So I'll try and be quick, but this one is sort of a funny example as well. So this is an example of some sort of trolling, sort of a valid question on our Instagram. So what it says, is kind of hard to read, is if you're going to list an amount, please post fruiting ratios, pound per barrel or gallon. A single weight number is basically useless information other than there be some peaches in here. That much fruit is going to make a bigger difference in 20 hec versus 200. So it is sort of valid that maybe we should change that. We also don't feel like we need to tell everyone our batch size, every single brew on our Instagram. So for this one, the text in the post said there's 2,100 pounds of peaches in this. It's a lot of peaches. If you want to reverse engineer this recipe at your house, go for it. But I don't know if that fruiting ratio is really going to make a difference to you. So I think the lesson here is it's a really good opportunity to engage with your follower base, and also to show your company voice through the way that you deal with trolls or haters. And also to take these always as learning experiences. Maybe they're telling you something that you totally didn't realize. Maybe they're making fun of your art because you didn't realize that something looks phallic in the back of the image, and maybe no one knows until you put it on Instagram. So what we responded here is, hey, it's actually 2,100 pounds in every can. Can you believe that? So, I don't know. There's a way to have fun with it in the right time and a place.
This is a weird image up here. the quick story is, I mean, we don't have a lot of this, but I mean, you have people that one person emailed us and just couldn't believe that we put beer in mason jars. And I mean, I get it, the mason jar trend's over, but in Abbotsford, where everybody's really behind in the world, it's still a thing. So I mean, we made a decision based on our brand and what fit in our market, and someone just really DM'd the crap out of us, just telling us how terrible we were. I think it's a decision whether to engage or not engage. All we did was respond and said, hey, there was some decision making behind this. This is what we did, and then they wanted to argue with us, and we just stopped talking. So you just have to decide for yourself. I think I don't think it's good to have public fights. I've seen some of those happen on Instagram feeds. I think that's not good for anybody and good for brands or the industry. But if you want to explain why you've done something and educate people, I think that's really important too. If you're really intentional about your decision making and you want to share that, then go for it. Metrics and paid posts. We don't do any paid posts, so I can't really comment on that. As far as metrics, I mean, you're right. These things aren't always indication of success. We do kind of look at them and look at what people are interested in, and what we find is that there's some recurring themes, but reality is I don't think that it really governs how we post things. I think we observe it and maybe we take some observations and learnings, but we don't really concretely pay a ton of attention to it.
So what you see here is an example of a poll where we asked our followers, what do you want to see the next shirt, the next character on a shirt to be? So here the point would be to let the functionality work for you. Like, don't work too hard. If you aren't sure what the next shirt's going to sell is, go to your consumers, and if people want to be annoyed about, oh my god, I can't find a Hillbilly Ninja shirt, say, oh, well, sorry, on social media we did a post, like maybe next time we do a poll on social, you can weigh in if you have a strong feeling. But in addition to something that's not on screen, is we choose only to boost events. And so I think about how much investment you put into that event and look at what 5% or 10% of the cost of that event is going to be, and then potentially put that into boosting your post. If you spent $5,000 on an event, it will be it will go a really, really long way for you to spend $50 or a lot farther to spend $500 on boosting that post, and then you'll get a lot more engagement on that post, which would translate to people showing up at your event.
I don't pay any attention to metrics because it's just too much work for me to do, and I only have to answer to me, and I also run the social media department, so I probably don't want to know how the metrics are actually doing. Like Marissa, we only boost two things. We boost events, and we boost job postings. And the reason we do that for both is because it allows you to reach an audience outside of your followership already. So you can put it so that it reaches people in your area. So we've got an event coming up called Analog. It's a vinyl fair that we do. And when I boost that, I boost it to New West and the surrounding communities. It doesn't necessarily, the people that we get out to that vinyl fair are different than our regular beer enthusiasts. So I know that if I just send it to my followers, the actual likelihood of a lot of people showing up is slimmer. So I boost it to get a few more people from the surrounding communities there that might not necessarily be into craft beer all the time. The other thing I just want to quickly touch on is be careful what you post. It can really quickly make you look like a bigger brewery than you actually are. I shudder when I see a beautifully professional looking photo of a beer can or bottle that's a sponsored post come through my feed. It makes you look like you're a bigger brewery than you actually are. And so I think that when you post or boost certain posts, you can do more damage than good. We've got one more slide. We actually have two, but I think that we can kind of tie it quickly in because I know we're running out of time. Okay, so what works? Looking through this, I realized that our top 5 posts for engagement, and probably our top 10, they have two things in common. They have people in them, and they don't actually have a picture of beer, which tells me that our followers at Steel and Oak, I guess they don't give a shit about our beer. No, what it tells me is that they care about something more than that. They care about the wins that we have as people. This is when we went from a big 30 occupancy to 50 occupancy, and but all those people that liked that photo remember what it was like when they tried to get in a Steel and Oak on a fucking Wednesday and they couldn't. And my liquor inspector is here too, and he helped me get through. Way to go, Doug! Thanks. And so for them, they could feel this win because because they knew how much it sucked when our tasting room staff had to turn people away. And so I think the important thing is to give people more than just your beer. They follow you and they've probably tried and they probably know it's good. So what is that other thing that you're into that you can show them that makes you stand out from everybody else? Unfortunately, beer isn't enough anymore. It was, but it's not anymore. There's enough good beer out there. So you have to do a little bit more, especially with your marketing.
Can we just go on to the last slide?
Yeah.
Thanks.
So this one is final thoughts. Something that you'll see up here drives home my point of always staying on top of trends. And as much as you think that tech is something that you don't need to touch and that you have nothing to do with, you use tech. And tech is a huge part of your daily business in your brewery, regardless of the size of it. So staying on top of emerging tech is usually important, and how I like to do that will vary from other people's, but I like to look at something called techmeme.com/river. So it's just like little snippets. It's one sentence of the biggest sort of world events and also tech events. And it shows you updates on algorithms. It shows you if there's a new iPhone coming out next month or something. And it's just, again, sorry, that was techmeme.com/river. It's super easy to look at and palatable. It takes like 2 seconds, and you can find out if there's going to be a software update to, iPhones or to the Android phones that all your staff are using. So it also will show you, as exactly like you were saying, both if the algorithms are changing, which will deeply affect your future scheduled posts, in addition to current events, which can have a massive effect on your scheduled posts. So the last thing I'll say there is get your handles if there's a new social media platform coming out. So Vero was touted as being the coolest new thing after Instagram. Go get parallel49brewing.com or on Vero, because you don't want someone else to get that and be like, well, you need to pay me 10 grand to have that. It's a huge pain in the ass, and I hope no one has to cross that bridge. And then the thing you see up here is the shoppable function on Instagram. This is a newer function. A lot of people don't know about it, but my point in showing this image very quickly is that there is emerging technology all the time. So you were talking about stories. Shoppable, while we are in beer, it's a little bit different, and you need to have a Shopify account that's linked to a Facebook fan page to be able to have a shoppable thing. But let people buy things from you way easier. So this is shoppable on Instagram. You can link to your store. You can't link to BC liquor stores, but you can link to your clothing and your hats.
All right, we'll have to cut it off there, guys. We're over. So if anyone has any questions, you're welcome to come up and chat. You do have some time in between now and the next session, so we've got a bit of a networking break. I just want to say thank you to all of you for coming in today, and we have made a charitable donation on your behalf to the BC Hospitality Foundation, and I have a thank you card for you. Thanks so much, guys.